New York, 1952. The air is thick with cigarette smoke, the clinking of whiskey glasses, and the low murmur of critics arguing about the latest piece splattered across the canvas. The piece is a swirl of chaotic colors, drips, and streaks of paint that, depending on who you ask, either redefined art or looked like something a toddler could do. But what the artists in their paint-stained smocks didn't know was that their revolution, sensible or not, was being bankrolled by the Central Intelligence Agency. Yes, the same CIA that overthrew governments, orchestrated coups, and played chess with world leaders, was secretly writing checks for guys flinging paint at a wall. Why? You see, in the 1950s, America had a problem. Not nuclear weapons, not spies, not even the fear of communism itself. Well, okay, they had all of those. But there was another crisis brewing. The world thought American culture was boring. Some even said it was more boring than watching paint dry. No pun intended. See, during the Cold War, the battle wasn't just fought with missiles and espionage. It was a war of ideas, a competition between two superpowers to prove whose way of life was superior. And in the culture department, the Soviet Union was winning. While the USSR paraded its world-class ballet, literature, and classical music, America had cowboy movies, rock and roll, and comic books. To European intellectuals, the United States looked like an uncultured, money-obsessed teenager compared to Russia's deep, artistic traditions. This was bad for American propaganda. The US needed to prove it was more than just capitalism, McDonald's, and baseball. It needed something highbrow, something intellectual, something that would make Parisian art critics stroke their beards and say, "Ah, magnifique, enter the CIA." Now, when you think of CIA operations, you probably imagine spies sneaking around, overthrowing governments, or planting tiny microphones in hotel rooms. But in the 1950s, the CIA decided that what America really needed was modern art. That's right. The Central Intelligence Agency, the same organization that once tried to poison Fidel Castro's cigars, secretly became the biggest patron of abstract art. And they did it all to beat the Soviets. Their plan? Promote artists like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, and Willem de Kooning, the pioneers of abstract expressionism. These guys were painting wild, chaotic, emotion-driven canvases that looked like someone had spilled paint on them. And that was exactly the point. See, Soviet art was all about strict rules, realistic paintings of heroic workers and glorious leaders. It was rigid, disciplined, and completely controlled by the state. American abstract art, on the other hand, was rebellious, free, and unrestrained. It was the perfect metaphor for democracy versus communism. But there was one small problem. The American public hated it. To regular folks, these paintings looked like something a toddler could do. Critics mocked them. Politicians ranted about wasting taxpayer money on nonsense. Even President Truman once said, "If that's art, then I'm a Hottentot." So, the government couldn't just come out and say, "Hey, we're funding this stuff." Instead, the CIA funneled money through a fake organization called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. They secretly sponsored museums, galleries, and exhibitions, all while making sure the world never found out who was really paying for it. And it worked. American abstract expressionism took over the global art scene. New York replaced Paris as the center of the art world. Suddenly, Europe's intellectual elite started seeing America as a cultural powerhouse. And the Soviet Union? Well, their stiff, propaganda-heavy art started to look outdated in comparison. The irony? Most of the artists had no idea they were part of a secret CIA operation. Some of them were even left-leaning anti-government types, exactly the kind of people the CIA normally would have spied on. But in the Cold War, propaganda came first. So the next time you see a Jackson Pollock painting and think, "I could do that," just remember, it wasn't just random splashes of paint. It was the CIA's secret weapon in the war against communism. And that, my friends, is how America won the Cold War with abstract art. Would you like to win the war going on right now in your heart? Why don't you like this video and subscribe to this channel? It works, I promise.